be with you. Will you please stand in body or spirit and join me in saying our gathering prayer? O majesty, O magnificence, O mysterious God, be hammer and break our indifference, be sun and splinter our shadows, be wind and scatter our despair, yea, the dark country of our souls, let thy grace reign, so that we may take root in thee, Lord. Make of us trees strong in all seasons, bearing good fruit, giving shade to all weariness, and shelter to them that are lost. So we pray to the glory of Jesus Christ, who made the cross tree, made it infirmity. Amen.
God, may the peace of God be with you all. Making a special effort to greet someone you do not know, let us share the hand of peace.
You may be seated. Well, welcome here to worship on this Easter Sunday morning at First Plymouth Congregational Church of the United Church of Christ. Welcome to those who have gathered here and those, I don't know if anybody's joined. Are we webcasting today, the second service or not? We are. All right, welcome to the folks webcasting as well. No matter if you are here out of habit or we're drawn here this morning hoping to hear some good news, or we're dragged here, or have come hoping to maybe get some leftover candy from the Easter egg hunt, you are welcome here. We especially welcome the Denver Pops Brass Quartet that is with us this morning, providing music. I invite you to read the information about upcoming events and opportunities that's in your bulletin on pages 9 through 12. And if there's anyone who would be willing to help deliver some of these Easter flowers to some of our shut-ins, I invite you to see either Terry Cruz or Kay Grice of our Pastoral Care Ministry staff after worship by the Mission Central place out here outside this door, and they can set you up with that. Good to have you here. If there are any children who are here who would like to come on up for a little bit of a children's time, you are welcome to do so. We'd love to have, or even if you wish you were a child again. I'm not sure we have great places. Some of you can sit on the steps here maybe, or so you can sit with me on the place here. You're all looking very nice. Is this a unicorn outfit? That is awesome. Love that. Nice. Well, I hope you're having a happy Easter. We got more coming? Can you find a spot here? Good to have you here. I wanted to tell you about this this whole Easter thing, why we have this big celebration at this time of year. I mean, we do like when the Easter Bunny comes and brings candy, But that's not really the reason this whole thing got started. So I was going to tell you the story, which is about a man named Jesus that we believe was like the best person ever to live. Some people say he was the Son of God, and it's kind of like he showed us what God would be like, as well as any person ever did. And he was a great person, but not everybody liked him. Some people thought he was a bit of a troublemaker, and they wanted to get rid of him. And the way that they did that is that at that time the Romans were ruled over most of the world at that time, and they got some of the Roman authorities to kill him. That's a pretty nasty way of getting rid of somebody, right? And the way that they did it back in those days, the Romans did it, is it was terrible. They would hang people on a cross to die. Here's a painting a Japanese artist once did of what that may have looked like. You see on the cross there. And they would just leave him there until he died. There's a few people kind of watching as it happens, but they couldn't do anything to stop it. And they put Jesus in a cave. When he was dead, the fairies came and helped him. Well, we're getting ahead of the story a little bit, but you're right. We'll get there. So the way that they buried people, at least the way he was buried, was they put him in what they called a tomb, which is kind of like a cave. And they had a big rock that after they put the body in there, they rolled this round rock over across the face of the tomb, and they would just leave him there until that's the way they buried him. Well, on a Sunday morning, kind of like today, this time of year, some of his friends, some of the women went there. They wanted to, because they really didn't have time to prepare him properly for burial, and so they wanted to see him one more time, and so they got there to the tomb, and they were wondering who's going to roll that big heavy stone away, because they couldn't move it. They got there and it was already open, and they looked inside, and he was gone. There was no body there. They found some of his clothes there, but he was gone. And some fairies or angels or somebody said, why are you looking for him here? He's alive again. Come up. And after that, a lot of his friends, for the next few weeks afterwards, they were sure that he was there. He would kind of appear out of nowhere, and he was alive again. That's never happened before. And it's never really happened again. As much as sometimes if somebody we love dies, we wish they could come back. They don't, at least not yet. But Jesus did. And we celebrate that on this day with Easter. So that's my story for you. And thanks for coming up, and I hope you have a great day here. And thanks for wearing your good bows and unicorns and flowers. All right? So hope you have a great day. Thanks for being here.
lesson comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 24, verses 1 through 12. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and on the 3rd day rise again." Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them, who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe the women. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb, stooping and looking in. He saw the linen cloths by themselves. Then he went home, amazed at what happened.
Try this. So I'm Bob Von Trebra. I'm the bridge minister here at First Plymouth Church until a newly called senior minister, the Reverend Jenny Schultz Thomas, arrives in July. And I've been here for less than a month, so for those of you who haven't had a chance to meet me yet, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was ordained to the ministry in Boulder, Colorado in 1996, and then I served a United Church of Christ congregation near Chicago for 19 years. And then I returned to the Rocky Mountain Conference, where I've done 2 interim ministries before coming here. I was for 2 years at Holiday United Church of Christ in Salt Lake City, Utah, and then at First Congregational Church in Loveland, Colorado for a little over a year before coming here. And shortly after I went to the Holiday Church in Salt Lake City, I went to one of the youth group gatherings, and I asked some of the youth what they thought I should talk about in some of my upcoming sermons. Not that they were particularly interested in listening to any sermons, but they actually came up with some great ideas. But one of the youth suggested that I should do my favorite sermon ever. Now that is a challenge. I've probably preached more than 1,000 sermons during my ministry, and I'm sure each one was as brilliant and insightful and inspirational and entertaining as the next. So it's hard to choose a favorite. But it occurred to me that the most important sermon I ever preached is Christ is risen. So how could that not be my favorite? Now, when I began my ministry, I thought it was my job as a preacher to say something clever on Easter, to kind of keep people entertained with a brief sermon while everybody was anxious to get on to other activities during the big day. I'm not sure that was terribly effective. Later, I thought it would be helpful to try to explain resurrection so it was more believable that it really is a part of our natural world, and it does make sense, but resurrection doesn't make sense. From what we understand about the way the world works, there's no way it should happen. A few years ago, the Reverend Matt Fitzgerald, who's the pastor of a UCC church in the Chicago area, wrote in the magazine The Christian Century that he believes that people come to church on Easter not to have the resurrection explained, but to have it proclaimed. The most improbable of messages. It makes no sense. It can't be explained. It is almost impossible to believe. And yet we want to believe it. So, this is my favorite sermon. The tomb is empty. Christ is risen. I know it is hard to believe, but generations of witnesses testify to this amazing truth. There are 4 Gospels, 4 books in the Bible with stories of an empty tomb, including the one we read from Luke this morning. They have incredible explanations that Jesus had been raised. The details of each account are different, but the central message is the same. And then there are other stories in the Gospels that tell how the risen Christ appeared to the disciples for several weeks following that first Easter morning. He was different. He was transformed. All of a sudden he could walk through closed doors or vanish in an instant. But he could also be touched. He could eat. The stories are hard to believe, just as the story in Luke says that the apostles thought that the report of the women about the empty tomb was an idle tale. Probably the only time in history when men have not believed what women told them. And I'm sure the men attempted to mansplain how a dead man could not be raised to life. Simon Peter had to check it out for himself, and he returned from the tomb amazed, even if still baffled about what had happened. Now, could it all have been made up? Well, maybe. In recent years, some biblical scholars have questioned the historical accuracy of these empty tomb stories. Over the centuries, various skeptics have suggested that the resurrection story was a mistake. Maybe the women went to the wrong tomb, or maybe Jesus never really died on the cross and he somehow escaped from the tomb after he'd been put in there, or maybe it was all a big hoax. But it seems that many people who knew Jesus during his life were convinced that Christ was alive again. In one of the letters he wrote, the book in the Bible that's now known as 1 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul wrote to a church that the risen Christ appeared to more than 500 people, and then eventually to him. Paul had never known Jesus during his lifetime, but he was convinced the risen Christ had appeared to him. Folks were convinced he was alive again. And this was no abstract philosophical decision whether to believe or not. Lives were changed. Simon Peter went from denying Jesus 3 times, out of fear for his own life probably, to later boldly proclaiming that Jesus was Lord of all, which was a dangerous message and political claim at the time that would later get him killed. The early disciples who hid in fear when Jesus was crucified, they later were willing to bet their lives that Christ was risen, and many of them gave their lives to spread that message. I sincerely doubt that the Christian church would be here at all if people did not absolutely believe that Christ was risen and alive. It's all too much to believe. And yet we want to believe. We want it to be true. Matt Fitzgerald wrote that he thinks people long for a God who cannot be contained, confined, or even described. A God whose victory over the grave could redefine their lives. You know, for the past few centuries, Protestant Christianity has gone through a period when people wanted the gospel stories and miracles to be explained in a rational, scientific way so we could understand. How did that happen? A lot of folks are saying that there's a new generation of young folks who are looking instead for mystery. For mystery. Well, folks, we have all the mystery you can handle. But if it is true that Christ has been raised from the dead, that means, among other things, a few things. First of all, death is not the ultimate power in this world. A lot of people sure think it is. Death is the ultimate enemy, the ultimate punishment. If you have the power to kill someone, you use it as a threat or as a weapon. If you have enough money that you can forestall death, you spend it. But if Christ has been raised and loves, then God's love is stronger than violence and stronger than death. Nothing can separate us from God's love. And that is a very different kind of world in which we believe we live. A second thing, if the resurrection is true, then that means we are not bounded by mortal existence. Eternity is ours. The French scientist and theologian Pierre Teilhard de Chardin once said, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." And so we don't have to frantically squeeze every possible activity into our short mortal lives, or live in despair that it's all pointless. A third thing, if the resurrection is true, then in the end, evil does not win out. God's justice will ultimately prevail. In the 2011 film, The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, the manager of the chaotic startup hotel in India, a guy by the name of Sunny, assures his guests, everything will be all right in the end. If it's not all right, then it's not yet the end. A fourth thing, forgiveness is ours. We are offered forgiveness for the ways we reject or deny or dishonor God. And it's possible for us to forgive others and ourselves. Eternity is too long to bear a grudge. If the resurrection is true, then there is always hope, a way out of no way. When our life as we've known it seems to come to an end and we wish we could die or go back to some better, happier time, a new life can happen. God can move the stones that keep us from new life. We can be changed, transformed. Nadia Bowles-Weber, who is the former pastor of the House for All Sinners and Saints Lutheran Church here in Denver, wrote, "The Christian faith, while wildly misrepresented in so much of American culture, is really about death and resurrection. It's about how God continues to reach into the graves we dig for ourselves and pull us out, giving us new life in ways both dramatic and small." And that is true of the church as well. Many congregations these days are facing difficult times in a changing world. Some of them may die, but there is still hope for new life. The old authority of the Christian church and many of its traditions may die, but new life can come from the old and reach new people in new ways. We are not alone in our efforts to make the church vital and effective. The living Christ is here with us to teach and lead and encourage. And then finally, if resurrection is true, then this world is much more amazing and mysterious and beautiful than we know, and perhaps more than we'll ever know. We like to think we understand how the world works. We've gotten pieces of it. But there are some things that don't fit with our worldview, and perhaps they never will. So what can one say about the resurrection? Christ is risen. What? It can't be. I hope and believe it can be and is. And that is my favorite sermon. Happy Easter. As we enter into this time of prayer, I'm going to guess, if you're like most people, today has maybe been a little hectic this morning. So I'm going to invite you to enter just into a little time of some silence. So I invite you to close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and just experience the peace of this place and perhaps the presence of God here among us. So let us pray. We praise you this Easter morning, Creator God, for the awesome gift of creation. This astonishing universe of which we are but a small part. And that long ago you brought forth life from what was dead. We rejoice in the beauty of spring, of flowers unfolding and trees greening and life renewing. We confess we are not always conscientious about caring for this gift of creation and for the life you have brought forth. Renew our sense of wonder and reverence for our world. We give thanks for the gift of Jesus, who lived to teach us your ways, who died because he was faithful in his love for you and all people, but was raised to show forth your holiness and power, and who now offers us new life as followers of the risen one. We rejoice in the good gifts of life this day, for family gatherings and feasts, for time of worship and spectacular music, for time for recreation and renewal. Bless our celebrations this day. We grieve at the terror that people can inflict upon one another. And we remember this day victims of school shootings, the bombings of churches. Be present in your love to all who are sick and grieving. Shine your resurrection light on those who believe life offers nothing. Comfort those who are near the end of their earthly lives and welcome them into your eternal love. And, O God, make us brave disciples, willing to risk life and security and treasure, as Christ's first disciples did, to take good news into the world to a hurting and unbelieving people. Make us Easter people. And now let us join together in the prayer that Jesus taught his followers as we say, Our Creator in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial, and deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen. And as we get ready to receive our offering, I'm going to invite Mr. James Harris from Groundwork, Colorado, Denver, to come and tell us about our share of the plate.
Happy Easter, everybody. My name is James Harris, and just briefly, I want to tell you a little bit about my organization. It's called Groundwork Denver, and we are an environmental organization that hopes to bridge the gap between communities and businesses and also government in order to provide a healthier environment. So we've been going for about 20 years now. And we have a variety of programs to help get clean water, clean air, and also just spread awareness of environmental issues and efficiency. So some of our programs are, we go out and test the waters in the Platte and also Bear Creek, and we send the test results straight to the EPA to have them analyzed and to see what kind of contaminants are in the water. So that program has been going for about 5 years, and we're getting a lot of good results. Our air program, we work with National Jewish Hospital, and we're testing the air in Glowville, Elaria, Swansea, those neighborhoods, and just to see what contaminants are there. We also have a program where we hire kids to work on the trails up in the mountains, to clean and build new trails. So if you have teens during the summer that you want to get out of the house, we can provide a source of employment there. So yeah, we're trying to educate the community about being good stewards of the environment, and we have a website, groundworkcolorado.org, that I urge you guys to go on and take a look at. There's information on there. There's a lot of volunteer opportunities, and you guys are doing some good things with your Whole Earth program, so definitely volunteer and be a part of that, and I appreciate you guys having me.
Will you please join me in reading our prayer of dedication as written on page 2 of your orders of worship? God of life,
ask your blessing upon all we bring to share. The message of today is spread through the streets across the land. The whole world to hear and observe. May the glass of practical ministry has forgiven and forgiving people. Take new life into the marketplace, into our jobs and schools, into our social life. May all we offer express true.
the morning offering will now be given and received.
That was awesome. Following the benediction, I'm going to invite you, if you are able, to be seated, because the organ postlude is one of my favorite musical pieces. I hope you will stay to enjoy it. But go with his blessing. Rejoice, people of God. Christ is risen from the dead. Go in peace to love and serve God. Christ is with us always, even to the end of the age. And let us celebrate and greet one another with the ancient Easter greeting of the Christian church. Christ has risen.